Stellar Blade! I've been saying a bunch of nice things about it on the channel. I finally got the chance to play the demo. So is it actually any good, or was I just hyping it up for nothing? Is it Game of the Year, or is it just gonna be another quadruple A flop for 2024? Let's find out. Yeah, this is clearly Game of the Year. I've been playing the Stellar Blade demo pretty much since it came out. I've done the hour-long playthrough section several times, and I've been sharpening my skills in the boss challenge mode that unlocks after the playthrough. I've got roughly 15 hours in the demo already, which should already tell you something. So how was the game? Well, I'm more than happy to say that it was actually pretty good. Nay, very good. This was pretty much exactly what I expected. It's a fun action-adventure game that borrows from some of the best titles in the genre. It's got a thoughtful combat system, a surprisingly deep customization system, excellent visuals, and huge bonus that it actually plays really, really well. And granted, this was just a demo, so they can always spruce it up to make it the best it can be. But if the final game is as polished as this was, then it's already off to a great start. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is Star. This game is coming out for real on April 26th, less than a month away at this point, and it's the first shot at the console market by the developers, Shift Up, which makes what I've been able to play that much more impressive, because these guys usually make mobile games. This is the studio who made Goddess of Victory Nikke, which is a great mobile game in its own right, but the jump from mobile to console is pretty big, so what the devs have been able to do is honestly really impressive. Is it actually a Game of the Year contender, though? The intro was definitely for the meme, but I honestly think at the very least this will get several nominations in a few categories. It's got some stiff competition this year with games like Final Fantasy Rebirth and Helldivers, but I think it will walk away with a few awards. In the demo, we get to play the very beginning of the game, starting on the first mission and getting into about an hour into the story. It's a nice taste of what the game offers in terms of exploration, combat, and customization. Since it's a demo, there were certain things that I was limited in. For example, certain abilities are locked in the skill tree, and there's some doors in the overworld that you can't open. The stuff we could get our hands on, though, was fantastic. I was especially happy with how smooth the movement in the overworld was. It was actually pretty hard to get stuck on the terrain, and the movement is very free. Anytime I found myself getting stuck on something, a simple jump would get me out of it, which was really nice. Like any action-adventure game, there is a bit of clunkiness to the movement, but once you settle into it, it's not an issue. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you know that Star Wars was my bread and butter for a long time. And I think Stellar Blade is comparable to Jedi Survivor in the control department. It's got some jank, but that jank just comes down to getting familiar with the timings, which I think is true for any game in this genre. Exploring the world was actually fun. There were enough secrets to find that it felt worth it to go off the main path and explore a little bit. The drone you have has a useful scan feature that shows you points of interest or things on the ground you might have missed, and it made finding my way around the map much easier. There were a lot of settings I could change too, things like auto-looting, auto-lock-on when attacking, and since it's a PlayStation 5 exclusive, it takes full advantage of the adaptive triggers. One point of criticism I had, though, is that in the demo there was no option to make custom button maps. You're locked into the control scheme that's already set up, so you will have to get used to that, but it's not bad. On release, I hope there is an option for custom mapping because I'm the type of player who likes to standardize my controls between games, just so I don't blank on which buttons to press in the middle of a fight. And on that topic, before we talk about combat, if you guys are liking the video and the commentary so far, a thumbs up would go a long way. I know it's annoying when creators ask, but the videos tend to do better when we do, so hit that thumbs up button. Do it. It's good practice for hitting the Natiba, because the combat in Stellar Blade is smooth, baby. The fighting in this game feels great. It's not a hack and slash. I mean, it is, but that's not the best way to play. If you're running in there sword blazing, just spamming square and triangle, you're gonna die very fast. When Jedi Fallen Order first came out, the developers called the combat system thoughtful, and that's exactly what this is. Every enemy has attack patterns that you need to memorize, and even some of the smaller, common enemies can do some big damage to you if you're not ready with the timings. You've got to parry everything. Below each enemy's health bar, there's a balance meter, and when you do enough perfect parries, you knock them off balance and can do huge damage with the Retribution ability. Enemies also have a shield meter, which is this bar here below the health bar, and while enemies have shielding, they take reduced damage. This is why I think the combat is really thoughtful, because there's so many layers to it. You have to get that shield down, you have to get that balance meter down, and ultimately that gets the enemy's health bar down, all while avoiding taking damage yourself. The devs did a really good job with the combat, and if this is your first action game with a combat system like this, I think it'll get you hooked. The dopamine rush from landing a perfect parry or dodge is amazing, even better when you can chain multiple parries back to back against bosses. The parries are a little weird at first and take some getting used to. The window is pretty consistent, but I found that when I got hit once, that would throw off all the rest of the timings. When you land a parry, the game goes into a very brief slow-mo to really accent the impact, and that brief pause lets you get ready for the next parry, but if you miss the first one, then the follow-up can easily hit you. After fighting the demo boss on repeat, I figured out quickly that the beta skills are where it's at to do big damage, and each one has a unique function. Circle had a ranged attack, which had a very strong knockback and let me do damage without having to get too close. Square was the easiest one to use, and Triangle was best for clearing out crowds. I didn't use the shield breaker on X enough when I first started, but once I did it on accident against the boss, I realized dropping those shields on the enemy is so important for doing good damage. Otherwise, you could just be wasting time and some of your beta energy on a shielded target. When the shields drop, the enemy takes way more damage, so combat really came down to defense first, offense second. After a bit, I realized that the basic sword attacks are relatively weak compared to the abilities, so melee attacks are more for charging up the gauge so that you can unleash the big power moves. With that said, it still helps to learn the different combinations that are possible. Each sequence of light and heavy attacks will change the combo. My personal favorite was light, heavy, light, because that third input was a flurry of hits that finished off most of the common enemies. Basic attacks aside though, I found that getting an enemy off balance with repeated parries and eventually taking down their shield was the most consistent way that I was winning fights. There's a lot more features in combat too, like the different grenades and health potions available. Grenades came in different forms, like a shock grenade or an anti-shield grenade, which was perfect for instantly dropping an enemy shield. There's different types of potions too, like a lingering potion for steady healing for a set time, or an instant recovery potion for a big health boost right away. The demo also let us try the third-person shooter mode during the boss fight. The slug shot was great for doing a small bit of damage and really laying into the shield. If all 30 shots land, it was almost enough to completely drop the stalker's shield, so leading with the gun was a pretty fun strategy. And that just speaks to how diverse the combat options are. You can really play and fight how you personally like. And we haven't even got into the different customization options yet. The customization for Eve is pretty in-depth. We've all been singing Shift Up's praises for the different outfits in the game, but the gear that you wear is just as important to the gameplay, if not more. The demo shows us different slots that we can equip gear into, or different exospines that Eve wears, each with their own buffs and perks, and choosing the right ones to take with you can make or break a fight. I think the exospine is probably the most important piece of gear that you can equip because it's got some of those base level buffs that you want. For example, there's the protection type exospine, which gives you a bunch of health and defense related boosts, like passive healing and less overall incoming damage. But then there's more offensive ones, like my personal favorite, the chain type exospine, which is all about increasing your damage output when comboing. There's a lot of different gear options too, stuff like buffs to your attack speed or some bonus damage. There's more than enough to experiment with and try different combinations to see what suits your playstyle the best. And speaking of suits, we of course have the outfits. The demo lets us play in the standard 7th Airborne Squad suit, or the skin suit, my personal favorite. And the boss challenge feature is where we can see the different gear options and a few more outfits to try on. It was confirmed by the devs that the outfits are purely cosmetic and won't affect your stats, so all the buffs and nerfs will be coming from your exospine and gear. As a musician myself, anytime a game has good music, it instantly elevates the rating for me. Stellar Blade has some stellar tracks. The vibe it sets honestly reminds me of Kingdom Hearts a lot. I actually had to check to make sure Yoko Shimomura wasn't a composer for this game too. Turns out she wasn't, but I think it's the fact that most of these tracks have some kind of vocals in them. Kingdom Hearts didn't have a lot of vocal tracks, but there were enough to be standouts, especially with the choir voices in later levels. Of course, this game is way darker than Kingdom Hearts, but I think the music complements it well. At each of the camps that you can rest and save your progress at, there's even a little record player where you can change the song while you're hanging out at the camp. You can just kick it there and jam to some good music while you upgrade your gear and unlock new suits. It's a nice touch. Exploring the world of Stellar Blade was pretty fun in this demo. It is worth it to explore because you'll find some gold and items that you might miss otherwise. And for me, when I went back and replayed the demo over and over, I always found something new that I missed the first time. Since we only get to explore the 807 area, and since it's the very beginning of the game, we don't have all the movement skills that might help us explore. Like, I tried to unlock the double jump to get to some higher areas, but the demo won't let you unlock it, so I'm sure there's a lot more to find when the game actually releases. But there was still enough to find where I think exploration is always worth it. And let's face it, this is the kind of game where it encourages you to stop and admire the scenery for a bit. What we've been shown of the story is pretty engaging. It's a basic plot. Monsters take over Earth, you come back to fight these monsters and try to save the planet. It's nothing we haven't seen before, but most of these stories are pretty predictable. In the first 5 minutes of this playthrough, there is a pure WTF moment, and it really makes you feel like nobody is safe. It's kind of the opposite of Kingdom Hearts, where you know nobody is gonna die, not even Goofy when he gets blasted in the face by a 1-ton boulder. He's just fine. But these characters definitely have their work cut out for them with the threat of the Naytiba, which are the monsters who took over the planet. All the characters we've met so far are excellent. There's Taki, the leader of Eve's airborne squad, and then there's Adam, who we actually meet a lot sooner than I thought we would. And of course, our very endearing protagonist, Eve. Once we get the full game and can explore the city of Zion, I'm sure there's going to be tons more memorable characters and points of interest to find, and I can't wait to cover it all on the channel. I'm starting to run out of time here, so before closing, I have to mention just how much I appreciate the fact that there is a demo for this game in the first place. In a day and age where it almost feels like a gamble to spend $70 or more on a pre-order, it's nice getting to try it hands-on first before committing to anything. That way, if you don't like it, you don't gotta risk spending the money on it. But if it ends up being good, then that might just be another sale for the studio. It speaks to the confidence of these developers that their product is a good one, that they're willing to let people try it a full month before the full thing is out. I don't think there's enough games that do demos anymore these days. Developers don't want to take that risk because if the demo flops, then the game will probably also flop. For a recent example, look at Skull and Bones. And to Ubisoft's credit, they did put out the demo and let players try their game before release. But that demo did the game no favors. Players saw how shallow that game was, pun intended, and it was the first quadruple A flop in history. I don't think it's the demo's fault. In fact, I think the demo saved a lot of people some money, myself included, but I appreciate that I was able to try it first. I know Ubisoft is probably kicking themselves for putting the demo out, but I as a consumer would have been infinitely more pissed if I actually bought Skull and Bones and ended up disappointed in my purchase. So just the fact that the Stellar Blade demo is out there is a very good thing. Bonus points that this one is actually good. But with that, those are my initial thoughts on Stellar Blade and the Stellar Blade demo. I don't pre-order games anymore, guys. It's just not a good idea these days when there's no promise of the game actually being good. I took a gamble on this one because I wanted to support Shift Up. I appreciate what they're doing and how they're sticking up for the gamers and not just doing things because they think it'll make them look good or because they're trying to score virtue points. They've legit made a good product, and I think it will be a contender for Game of the Year. The PlayStation exclusives have been fire so far, though. Rise of the Ronin came out earlier in March, Final Fantasy Rebirth has made waves. PlayStation already won the console war, but I think Stellar Blade will just solidify its position as top console. These are just one man's thoughts and opinions, though. What about you guys? Have you tried Stellar Blade yet? And if so, how are you liking the demo? Let me know in a comment below. Let's gush together over our new favorite video game anime waifu. But that's going to be all for today. This has been Star. Huge thank you for checking out the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.